Okay, everybody, this is Flea Market Fantasy. We at number 4, right? Are we at number 4? I can't remember.
Number 4.
Number 4, awesome. Okay, so this is your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by...
Michael Dell of the LCS
Yes.
Hockey Radio Show.
Yes, all right. So, would you like me to introduce this week's pick?
Yes, because it is one of your selections. So you
Okay. So I gotta admit, I wasn't random. I didn't draw this out of a hat. I specifically picked this because it features my favorite superhero team, the Guardians of the Galaxy. We are reviewing Thor Annual number 6. Okay? And yes, and I've got this in my Guardians of the Galaxy Tomorrow's Avengers Volume 2 collection. Okay? And it's written by, just a minute, let me just crack open the cover here. It's written by Len Wein, who's the co-creator of the new X-Men, and it's co-written by Roger Stern of Spider-Man fame, drawn by Sabu Sama and Klaus Janson, right?
Yeah, he did the inking. Yep.
Yes. And that's about all I got to say. You can take it from there, Mike Dell.
Well, yeah, Thor Annual 6. This is from December 1977, and the title is Thunder in the 31st Century.
Yes.
Thunder in the 31st Century. All right, so Michael, before we get into the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, because I have a lot of questions about that with you.
Sure.
This is an annual, Thor Annual 6. Now,
Yes.
do they even still do annuals these days? Is that still a thing?
You know what's funny? Now that I think about it, I don't think so. No, I think they kind of brought them back in the zeros, and then they kind of stopped doing them again but back in these days, it was a chance to do, a giant size or double size story, right? That you couldn't do in a regular issue. And then by the time they got to the 90s, it kind of became a regular size story with a bunch of crappy backups. You remember those, like in the late 80s, like Atlantis Attacks and Evolutionary War, and then it got worse from there. But back in these days, these were some, epic size stories, and this is one of them, I think, sort of.
Yeah, I believe the annual concept started. They would publish one issue there a year at the end of the year and they would reprint stories that ran throughout the year. So it was just like a collection of reprinted stories, and then they started putting original content in there. And like you said, most of the time it was just one-off stories that were double the size but had no real relation to the ongoing storyline in the book, although sometimes they did. And then, like you mentioned, in the 80s and 90s, they started to do what they did with that Atlantis Attacks and the Evolutionary War stuff. They would tie together all the Marvel books through their annuals. Like there'd be one big crossover story through the annuals. That was questionable. I don't know.
Yes, the quality was very questionable, right?
I didn't like any of this. But yeah, when you're dealing with an annual, a lot of times the creative team is different because the other guys are too busy working on the regular books to do the annual. So
Good point.
You will see people jump in here. Like we'll talk about the creators after we discuss the issue. But like Len Wein is given credit for writing here, but he was the regular scripter on Thor at this time. But he just probably did the plot with Roger Stern, and Roger Stern handled all the script and the dialogue and all that. And Sabu Sama, I'm still learning.
Buscema, yep.
He was not the regular artist at this time on Thor. Was Walt Simonson.
Okay, I didn't realize Walt Simonson was the artist this early on, but okay.
Yeah, he had a run early on. Remember, I did. If you go back, I think one of the last Flea Market Fantasies I wrote was that Thor issue where he fought Stiltman. And that's right about this time. Like that's a couple months after this annual came out, and Simonson was the artist on there. And before Walt, the artist before Walt took over was actually John Buscema. So look at that.
Really?
But Sal was not the regular Thor artist. He just came in to do the annual, and that was it.
Interesting. So I guess what I didn't realize, and maybe I forgot because you probably talked about it in your written article, is that Simonson actually had a run before he took over with number 337 then.
Yes.
See, that makes sense. It's just like I didn't realize till later that, John Byrne is famous for doing FF starting with number, I think it's 232, but he was actually already the artist. Yeah. He was drawing Marv Wolfman scripts, I think, right?
Kind of like last week when we had Frank Miller and Daredevil. He was originally just the artist, and then he took over.
Right.
So same sort of thing.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, so that's the annual concept. So, Michael, where does this tell the kids how the story starts? What's going on?
So basically, Thor is flying along, and he, to me, he kind of does an un-Thor-like thing, and that's that he sort of thwarts a bank robbery,
Yes.
which is something, it's not, you don't think of Thor doing something like Batman or Superman would do, but here he is. Then he gets transported to the future. It's the 31st century, and basically, for people that don't know, and I'm sure that anyone listening to this does know, but just in case they don't, the original Guardians of the Galaxy team was not the team featured in the movies. It's a team, it's more like the Legion of Superheroes. It takes place in the far-flung future, and it's a group of, adventurers sort of flying around in the ship and basically just, getting them, not getting into trouble, but sort of just having little adventures. And so basically, that's what happens is he ends up aboard. Actually, he's in space and he freezes in space, but he doesn't die because he's immortal. The Guardians bring him in, and then it kind of goes from there. And then there's a lot of pages of something you really like, Mike Dell, and that's a lot of what do you call it?
Fist fights. Yeah, fist fights.
A lot of fist fights follow.
But
and then it goes.
You're skipping over a lot of stuff here, though. You're jumping kind of. Haphazardly through the plot.
Oh, am I? Okay, okay.
You're skipping a lot of stuff. We need to slow down.
Okay, I'll slow down.
You don't want to miss the beautiful details of this amazing story. All right, so you mentioned Thor stopping a bank robbery, and technically that's right, but it's also terrorists, Michael. They're terrorists.
Yes, that's true.
And they have like a nuclear reactor or something in the bank or wherever the hell they are, and they're going to blow up the city. They're going to blow up the city. True.
Yeah.
And I can't remember why. They had some like social justice concern. They were worried about that. They were trying to make a statement against the man, I think. They were trying to fight the power. And Thor said, no, you can't. I don't care how good your cause is. You can't just blow up the city because of it. So Thor takes down the nuclear reactor, but then it gets zapped and from some sort of mysterious ray, takes the machine and Thor, boom, into the future. Now, here's what I don't understand, Michael. Maybe you can explain this to me. We find out later that the guy who the enemy doing all this is a fellow named Korvac.
Yes.
And we'll get into him here in a minute. But Korvac, for some reason, he's in the 31st century. Mm-hmm. Yet he decides, I need to go back to, 1977 and get this nuclear reactor, which would have to be super primitive technology, because I really need this for my plan. Like, did they ever really discuss why he needed it?
You know what? That's a good point. And as far as I know, Korvac, he's originally from the 20th century, right? As far as I know. Because
no.
I know he's not.
No.
Okay, because I know he fought the Avengers and all that, so I thought he was native to the 20th century. Okay.
I can explain a lot about Korvac. I did a lot of research on Korvac because I had never heard about Korvac until this issue. But apparently, he's a very prominent Avengers villain. He had a nice run there, about a 10-issue arc where they fight Korvac, and it's been collected in a collection, the Korvac Saga, I believe is called.
Yes.
Like, were you aware of this?
Yes, I've never read it, but I've heard a lot about it, and I came across references to it in the Marvel Universe. And I the only thing I know about it is it's written by Jim Shooter, correct?
I'm not even sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's his like Avengers tour de force, and then basically people say that he reused most of the plot for Secret Wars 2.
That's what I was going to. That's exactly what I was going to say, because even though I didn't read the Korvac Saga, I read like the description of it, and it sounded very much like Secret Wars 2.
Interesting. See, okay, because I'd never, So, I mean, I've read bits and pieces of Secret Wars 2, and I don't remember much about it, but that's the only thing I really know about it. But it is supposed to be good, the Korvac Saga.
Secret Wars 2 is basically the Beyonder from Secret Wars 1, who gathered all the heroes on the battle planet there and made them all fight. He comes back to Earth as a human, in a human form, and he tries to experience what it's like to be a human. And we'll get into Korvac and how that relates in a minute here. But so Thor gets zapped back into Korvac, or ahead through time to Korvac's day, and Korvac's trying to beat up Thor with his little machines, and he can't do it. So he says, "You know what? Screw this. I'm just going to zap you out into space." So like you said, he sends him out into space. Thor freezes into like an ice cube, and the Guardians find him. Your beloved Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
And oddly enough, didn't a similar thing happen basically in Endgame or the Infinity War or whatever movie that was?
You know what? I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Because didn't they find Thor, bring him on the ship and stuff? And
that's true. I don't know if they were necessarily thinking about this, but it's possible.
Yeah. I thought it was a little weird. All right, Michael. So let's break out the beloved Guardians of the Galaxies. Now let's go through this team here. First of all, why do you like? Why is this your favorite superhero team? Because when you said your favorite superhero team, I'm like, oh, he loves the Justice League, or number 2 would probably be Alpha Flight, fellow Canadians. But no, Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's because the Guardians of the Galaxy are superheroes mixed with science fiction. Okay. And each one of these characters is basically here's the thing. I only read about them in Marvel Universe, so I was never an expert. I only in the last few years have finally been able to read their stories, right? Because I got the collection. But so from what I know, it's like Charlie 27 is adapted to live on Jupiter, even though Jupiter has no surface. Fine, we'll ignore that.
Well, so that is correct. Charlie 27 is a soldier and pilot who is genetically engineered to live in Jupiter's gravity, and he has 11 times the muscle mass of a normal human.
Yes.
Superhuman strength,
So cool.
stamina, and durability. He's basically their version of Thing.
Yeah, you could say that. But he also, depending on who draws him, he's supposed to look really like flattened out, right? Like he looks like a regular human, but he's just been squeezed down into like, you know,
Yeah, not really like flat and two-dimensionally, but you mean like compressed a little bit. Even
like
though
compressed.
He's big and bulky,
Yes.
but yeah.
He looks compressed, yes, vertically compressed. Then you have Martinax, who is made out of, what is he made out of, crystal?
Yeah, like crystals and whatnot. Like he's
Yeah,
just
but
one
he's
giant crystal. He was
Right,
he was born on Pluto, Michael. Pluto.
Yes.
He's a
Isn't that cool?
Plutonian or whatever they call him. Yeah. He can project thermal beams of heat or cold. And he reminded me, Michael, I was a big X-Men fan growing up, and you remember the Mutant Massacre when the Marauders came in and they were ripping up the Morlocks. There was a Marauder named Prism. Who was a giant like cube like or crystal like person who Jean Grey ended up killing. I think.
Was it? Which one did Colossus kill?
That was Riptide.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and Jean Grey. Prism was beating up Cyclops and somebody, I don't know, Beast, and she just flipped out and like threw him into a metal bowl or metal pole, and he shattered. So yeah, it's a shame.
And obviously a superficial resemblance to Iceman, but he's cooler because he's got different colored shades to his, the crystals on his body, whatever. So
yeah, and Martinix is not as fragile as Prism. He actually seems very durable. So
yes. Yeah. And then we've got 2 more originals here. We've got Yondu, right?
Yep.
Who is, even though he is featured in the movie, that to me is not the real Yondu. The real Yondu,
completely different character, looks and personality, everything's different. Yeah.
Right. The original Yondu is, I think he's supposed to be more like kind of an analog to like a Native American, right?
Yes.
With like the bow and arrow and like the mohawk sort of fin or whatever. And he's apparently from the Beta Centauri system, right?
Yep.
And he's got blue skin and the red fin, but again, just a really cool look to him.
The one kind of similar thing to the movie is Yondu. He shoots his bow and arrow, and he shoots steel. I think they're called Yaka steel or something from his home planet of Centauri 4, and they're sound sensitive, so he can shoot the arrow and then he whistles to control the arrow.
Yes.
So it's very similar to the movie and how Yondu has that thing that he whistles. But there you go. So there's Yondu.
But again, in all of I could never in a million years be so creative to think of a power like that. I think it's so cool. But whatever. Okay, then we have my favorite of the originals. I don't know if he's the leader, but he's kind of the protagonist because he's actually from the 20th century, and his name is Vance Astro. Real name Vance Astrovic. An astronaut who is sent out into space as an explorer, goes into suspended animation, and then by the time he gets to his destination, humanity has bypassed the level of technology that he has, and so basically his trip is completely irrelevant.
Yes. Yep.
It's so cool, right?
That is a great story arc there for a character.
And he's stuck sort of in this suit that if he were to take it off, he would age 1,000 years.
Yes.
So very cool origin. And the other cool thing I love that Marvel did, and they've done this before with Kang, is that because he's in the future, what they do is they create an alternate timeline of Vance Astro, and in our timeline, he becomes Marvel Boy.
Really?
Yeah, so he becomes the Marvel Boy that was in the New Warriors in the late 80s and early 90s. And
yeah, because I got two problems there. One, I never heard of Marvel Boy. And and two, I'm kind of disappointed that they had a Marvel Boy because that's pretty dumb.
Oh, come on. Hey, I'll have you know that Quasar's original name was Marvel Man, and he got his quantum bands from the original 1950s Marvel Boy.
Oh, wow.
So technically there's two Marvel Boys, yes.
He got his bracelets from someone. All right. Yeah, we got to talk.
He sure did.
All right, so that's Major Vance Astro, and he is kind of like the de facto leader. He's kind of a hothead sometimes. And
a little bit, yeah.
And he kind of goes off on his own. He also loves Captain America. He's obsessed with Captain America. And I guess later, Michael, they find Captain America's shield, I guess, as an old relic, and he carried that for a while in battle. And,
in the 90s, yeah, in the 90s series, yeah.
And I think he also has psionic abilities. Like, he can move stuff with his mind and, like, shoot force beams out of his head. But
right, yes.
I'm not sure. Now, how did he get those? I hear tell it was a blood transfusion with the future Wonder Man. Does that make sense?
You know, it could be, but according to his Marvel Universe entry, it says through, and what does it say? In some unknown manner, Astro's brain generates psionic energy. So apparently they never really explained it.
I thought I read that he was in a blood transfusion with a character named Hollywood, who is basically the future's version of Wonder Man.
Could be. I don't know, yeah.
And Wonder Man was terrible, too, by the way. But anyway.
Yeah, Wonder Man.
All right, so that's Vance Astro. Now, we got two other people here, Michael.
Yes. We got two more. We've got Nikki.
Yes, Nikki.
Yeah, not a very creative. They didn't get very creative with that name there.
No,
but
Martin X, Yondu, and Nikki.
Yeah, and apparently that is her real name, last name unknown, but her first name is Nikki, and she is from Mercury.
Yeah.
And I don't really know much about her other than I guess she's she's got the typical abilities of a Mercurian-born human, obviously.
Yeah, there's typical abilities, yes.
A typical, yeah. So she can block out harmful ultraviolet radiation, and let's see, does she have any other powers?
Oh well, yeah. Her hair is on fire. Her hair is
there you
fire.
go. I guess that's a power, yeah.
And I guess she runs hot. Like you got to be careful touching her. You can burn yourself.
Okay.
And she uses blasters as her weapon. That's her big thing. She's like an ace with the blasters.
Do you mean specifically a neuronic frequency stun gun?
That's exactly what I meant. No,
exactly. Yeah.
Also,
typical.
The other note I have about Nikki here, her other power is she's super horny for Thor. Yeah, she really wants to get on Thor.
That's alluded to in this issue. Absolutely.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And here's a little tidbit for you, Michael. Later on, you probably are aware of this already, but Charlie 27 and Nikki become a couple there for a while.
Actually, no. You know what? I haven't come across that yet because I'm at the same point in Guardian's chronology as this issue is. I haven't read past it, so I don't really know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they become a couple. All right, so they break up though, but they remain friends, which is nice.
Yeah, that's nice. That's always nice.
So, all right, Micah, we got one left, and I know this guy's probably real close to your heart. So go ahead.
Starhawk.
Starhawk.
So he's kind of like he's got a really cool power. He's basically a combination of two different people named Stakar and Alita. And what is it? They exchange bodies, right?
Sure.
I believe.
I don't know.
Well, like all Arcturians, Starhawk is a long-lived. He's long-lived, and I'm just skimming the Marvel Universe here. Yeah. Let's see here. I should know this.
Well, Mike,
he can fly. Oh, what?
There's a big tidbit about Starhawk that you're glossing over entirely, but who's his daddy?
Wait a minute here. Hold on a sec. I should know this,
yes.
No, I don't.
It's Quasar. His daddy's Quasar.
Wait, say what? Say since when?
You host a podcast about Quasar, and you don't even know that Quasar's Starhawk's daddy.
I lost all my street cred. How is this possible? This must have been revealed later on. It had to have been.
I expected like 15 minutes of nothing but Starhawk's.
No.
And you're gonna break down how Quasar taught him all this, and Quasar bought him bracelets, and all this.
No.
You didn't even know.
Okay,
wow.
I have to find out when this was revealed, because if it's within my timeline of like 70s and 80s, I'll be embarrassed, okay? But if not, then I'm in the clear.
Well, he is Quasar's kid, and his adult mind was sent back in time to possess his infant self. So Starhawk lives his life over and over again. He can manipulate light. He has super strength and speed. He can fly, enhance senses, and precognition, because he's basically lived his life already. So he has memories, and he can tell what's going to happen. And he calls himself the One Who Knows. I'm the One Who Knows.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of like the Dr. Manhattan of the Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
Yes.
You could say?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Seems about right. Because he's very standoffish, and he's always got off doing his own thing, and they don't really trust him. The other Guardians, they don't see him as like a real loyal teammate. He's kind of on his own a lot of times, but yeah.
Okay, guess what, Mike Dell? I am in the clear. The revelation that Quasar was Starhawk's father did not happen until 2002.
Oh, okay.
So that is outside the parameters of most of my comic book knowledge. So I think I'm okay.
All right. Well, now, how does that make you feel, though, that knowing that Starhawk is Quasar's baby boy? Does that make you like, oh my God, I really love Starhawk now? Or
yeah, I like him even more now. Exactly. Yeah.
But what about Starhawk's costume? He looks like he's got the blue outfit and like yellow stripes on it or something. But then when he goes out in space to fly, he gets these big, like, I don't know, what would you call them, Michael?
Well, they're not quite wings. It's kind of like I don't know. It's like a combination of wings and a cape, kind of, right?
But it's like a cape that the center is cut out of. Like there's just the edges of a cape around him.
Yeah, and it's weird because it goes from his back to his like ankles. And so it's almost like having two sails on his back.
Yeah,
because
then he also has some that connect to his head too, right? And then they go back. So I don't know. It's weird.
It was strange times. I think there might have been, certain illegal chemicals used in the creation of these characters, for all we know, right? And that could have explained a lot of this. I don't know.
Yeah, there may have been some LSD at play. So, but I like the Guardians, like you mentioned, how they're kind of like sci-fi and superheroes. But I like how each one comes from a different planet,
Yes, I love that.
So it's like a League of Nations in a way.
Right.
Coming together. So, all right. So in the story, they find Thor, and they bring him aboard the ship, and they thaw him out. And again, Nikki's like swooning for Thor. She's way into Thor. What else is going on? Oh, well, something happens with the ship. Oh, their ship gets hit by something. I think it's Korvac's men or something. They start attacking the ship, and it starts.
His cronies.
Yeah, and it starts to fall apart. But the galaxy, the Guardians of the Galaxy, they work as a team, Michael. They work as a team, and they fix the ship. Like there's
always a moral, right?
Yeah, like Astro stops this equipment from toppling over with his mind beam, and then Charlie 27 holds it up, and then Yondo ties up the electrical cord so Charlie 27 doesn't die. It's a well-oiled machine. They work together as a team.
Exactly. I love it. Now, other than that, and a few fisticuffs. To be honest, there's not much that happens, and there's not much of a plot to this issue. I mean, I do like the idea that Korvac has the ambition to have this. I think he calls it a galactic empire, right? Yeah, he wants to rule the galaxy.
And I guess his ultimate plan here is he wants to make the Earth's sun go nova. So and he wants to capture all of that energy to power his ship and his various machines. To then become like the galactic ruler. I think that's the plan here. But I'm so confused. Again, I'm just confused about the 31st century in 1977 and why he even had to involve 77. I don't know. I think it was just to get Thor out there. But we need to talk about Korvac because, again, I had no knowledge of this fellow. His real name is Michael Korvac. So that's nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the original, apparently when they released the original collection of his story, they was called the Michael Saga.
Oh, well, that's not, Korvac's much better. The Korvac Saga.
Yeah, they thought better of it and re-released it as the Korvac Saga, which is obviously much more enticing, right?
And that's Korvac if you're scoring at home. It's Korvac.
Yes.
And he's a computer technician born on the alternate Earth in the year 2997. And when the Brotherhood of the Badoon, a reptilian alien species, conquered Earth, Korvac turned traitor. and he started working for the Badoon. But then one day, when he's a computer tech, working very hard, he falls asleep at his computer terminal. The Badoon dudes come in and they say, hey, let's play a prank on him. So they fuse him to his computer terminal. So Korvac, from the waist up, he's a normal fella. And he kind of looks like the Phantom, the old comic strip, the Phantom, like the purple outfit. A little bit like that.
True, yep.
And then from the waist down, though, Michael, he's a robot. It's a computer terminal.
Yes.
It's a computer.
He even has one of those levers, right, on his left.
Yeah, he's a computer terminal from the waist down. So I'm guessing that hampers his social life.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Probably,
tough.
Yeah.
Find the lady accepting of that. But he's a genius, Michael. He's a genius. He's got the big brain, and he's he's a living computer. So his big skill is that he can analyze his opponents, and then he can devise a plan to counter them and to beat them. He's a living computer.
Again, more science fiction, right? Don't you love it?
Sure, I guess.
I just love. I mean, he's a time traveler. He's part man, part computer. I just think that's so cool, you know.
Now,
and he's got these cronies. Oh, anyway.
Yeah, we'll get to his cronies here in a minute. Now, Korvac, the reason this whole Korvac Saga then happens in the Avengers, which happens shortly after this, because after, spoiler alert, Thor defeats Korvac. Korvac, he goes back into time onto Earth. I forget how this happens. But he apparently absorbs some of Galactus's power cosmic. Because he like hacks into Galactus's ship's computers or something, and he gets touched with the power cosmic, so he basically becomes a living god.
Okay.
And then he goes down to Earth, and he's trying to live like a normal life. And the Avengers, sniff him out. They're like, all right, we got to stop Korvac. And then Korvac fights the Avengers, and he's just laying waste to the Avengers. And I guess he like kills everybody except for like a couple Avengers. And then they defeat him finally. And then he recognized the errors of his ways, and he decides with his dying breath to restore everybody he killed. So he brings them all back to life.
Which is, I don't remember exactly how Secret Wars 2 ends, but it's something like that. Except that I don't think he willingly loses in Secret Wars 2 the Beyonder, does he? Well,
I think what I recall, Michael, if you remember the new Marvel Universe, that all started because at the end of Secret Wars 2, the Beyonder, like, died, quote unquote, but he created a whole other universe.
Is that how they explained it? I didn't realize they tied that in. I had no idea. Okay.
Yep.
Huh, interesting.
So there's your Korvac. But maybe I'll go back and read this Korvac Saga and get more details on this, because I'm sure I'm describing it poorly. But
I'm looking forward to reading. I mean, I'm trying to read the whole Avengers run. I'm up to number 15, so I've got a ways to go. But I'm eventually going to get there. Yeah.
Ways to go. Michael, name the original Avengers.
The original? Giant Man. Well, sorry, Ant-Man, Wasp, Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor.
Yeah.
And Rick Jones, if you count him.
Yeah, people always forget like the Wasp and Ant-Man, but yeah, they were original.
Yeah, absolutely.
Originals. All right, so now Korvac, he can't just do this on his own, Michael. Again, he's half robot, he's half computer. He can't walk around. He needs some minions. So not only does he have minions, Michael, he has the Minions of Menace. That's their. That's their.
Is that what they're called? Yeah, I guess
that's their official name. The Minions of Menace. And what a motley crew this is.
Yes.
If the Guardians are your favorite superhero team, I'll say the Minions of Menace might be my least favorite superhero team.
Yeah, they're right at the bottom. I gotta say, I think my favorite, and when I say that I mean least favorite, is the short little yellow guy.
Yeah.
What is his name?
His name
Manslayer.
His name is Grot.
Yeah, Grot the Manslayer. What a weird character.
He looks like a yellow baby in a blue diaper.
You're totally right.
He has antenna on his head.
Yes.
And apparently those are what gives him his power, the antenna. He absorbs solar energy through his antenna, and then he can transmit that into like force like beams and shit. Oh, I just swore. Can we work blue on the Flea Market Fantasy? Is that all right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
Yep.
So, but apparently this Grot kid, this little baby, a yellow baby, he fought the Hulk and almost beat the Hulk.
Really?
Yeah, that's how strong he is.
Okay.
So, that seems a little crazy, but...
Again, they were experimenting with, medication back then, and they probably that's how they came up with this guy here. But yeah, definitely an interesting look to this guy.
All right, then we also have Dumog, which is like this white blob with tentacles and a single eye. And
oh boy, yep.
Dumog is a telepath. Just
he looks kind of similar to the character on. Do you watch the Orville?
No.
Oh, the Orville. There's a character. It's a big blob. He's played by what's his name? Jeez, the guy from SNL that used to do the news. He's really funny. Can't even remember his name. But anyway, he's kind of like that. He's just like a big slug, right, with tentacles and an eye.
Colin Quinn?
No. This was mid to late '90s. Jeez, I can't remember his name.
Yeah,
we'll have to Google it later.
Well, Norm Macdonald.
There you go, Norm Macdonald.
Norm Macdonald's on the Orville?
Absolutely, yeah. He does the voice of that character. Yep.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't even guess Norm Macdonald because I figured, well, there's no way he'd do that show.
Yeah, isn't that hilarious? Yeah, he's on it.
All right, so we got Dumog and Grot. Then we have Torque, not Peter Tork of the Monkees, just Torque.
Okay.
He's a large reptilian biped covered in scales and spikes, and he also has a spiked tail. He's like a little dinosaur, kind of, Torque.
Well, he's like, I mean, if you want to be nice, you could say Ankylosaurus, but if you want to be practical, he kind of looks like a turtle. Right?
Yes.
Like a spiky turtle.
Yep. Then we have Teju, Teju, Teju. He's a semi-humanoid reptilian. He's basically the lizard without the lab coat. That's what you're looking at.
Yeah, and a bigger head.
Yeah. Then we have Brawl, Brahl. He looks a bit like Nightcrawler, and he's blue and whatever, and he can turn intangible. That's his big power. Yeah,
he's probably my least favorite because he basically just looks like a typical supervillain, right? There's not much imagination to him.
Yeah, I could say I guess my favorite of the group would probably be wow. I guess
that's
Thor.
Tough.
I guess Thor.
Yeah.
Because it lets me to make monkeys jokes, but that's about it. Yeah. So the Minions of Menace. Michael, can you think of another team this bad in comic books? Like, can you?
Oh, okay. I got one for you. Have you ever
right.
heard of the Terrible Trio from DC?
No.
Would you? Okay. Are you near a computer?
Sure.
Okay. If you look up the Terrible Trio from DC, you will see an absolutely worse group of supervillains than this one. Trust me. And if anyone out there is listening, they'll know exactly what I mean. You've got three guys dressed up in three-piece suits, and they, I don't even know if these are masks or if this is what they really are like, but one has a fox head, one has a shark head, and one has a vulture head. They are ridiculous, okay?
Yes.
So the Terrible Trio.
I'm looking at them right now. That is preposterous. Do they have superpowers, or they're just furries, or?
Well, I'm sure the teeth are, like they function like teeth, so I'm sure they're sharp. But other than that, I don't know if they have any powers. But I'm just skimming through here now. Let's see, powers. No, it doesn't say anything about powers, so I think it's just they have heads like that.
Yeah, I got to tell you, if there's a fight between them and the Minions of Menace, it's Minions of Menace all day. They stomp.
Yeah. Okay.
No doubt. Well, Daredevil, who was the Enforcers? Remember the Daredevil one means the Enforcers? You had Ox, the big strong guy, and then you had a little guy with like a knife, and then a guy with a lasso. That's about it.
Yes. They're pretty rough too.
Yeah, not the best. All right, so the Minions of Menace, they try and hold off. So Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy, they get to Korvac's planet, or wherever the hell he is, and they got to stop Korvac. So then we should mention the story's divided up into like 4 chapters. So chapter 1 was Thor and the Terrorists. Chapter 2 was the Guardians of the Galaxy finding Thor. Chapter 3 we get Korvac and the Minions of Menace. And the best thing about the Korvac and the Minions, when they're telling about their plan, Korvac just decides to take a break and just explain his entire backstory to his minions.
I know.
There's like three pages of him just telling them the whole thing about his life.
I know, it's ridiculous, but it's so funny because usually I hate these flashbacks, but in this case, I didn't know any of this stuff, so I was like, yeah, go ahead. Keep talking.
Yeah, Korvac, we have no idea who you are. You might as well talk. So then in chapter 4 is the big climax of the issue. We get everyone together. They're all fighting it out. The Guardians and Thor, they show up, but Thor and Starhawk break off from the others, and they go to find Korvac, while the rest of the Guardians go toe-to-toe with the Minions of Menace.
Yes.
What a fight this is.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
It's entertaining. I'll say that. Definitely entertaining. Not great. There's actually
the interesting thing here is the minions are handing it to the Guardians. They're whipping them pretty good, and then the Guardians say, "Hey, we got to work as a team, and let's switch partners." So they decide to switch partners.
That'll trick.
And then they attack the weaknesses of the others with their strengths, and then they wipe out the minions rather easily, I think.
And in fact, Nikki even shoots off Grot's antenna, right?
Yep.
My antenna, she snicked off my antenna. It'll take me a year to grow them back. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
So he's powerless. He's just a yellow baby without the antenna. That's it. So, yeah.
Can you imagine if they made a movie of these guys? Do you remember that episode of Star Trek where they had a baby, like an infant play an alien, an adult alien? Do you remember that one?
I vaguely remember that.
Well,
yeah.
okay, if you Google Star Trek,
talking baby.
Because it was played by Ron Howard's brother, Clint Howard. So if you Google right now Star Trek Clint Howard, you'll see this freaking scary looking baby playing this alien. And if they could, I mean, obviously they can't get Clint Howard, but it would be great to have a baby play this Grot character, because that would be freaky.
Well, every time I saw Grot, I just kept thinking of Ally McBeal. Remember they had that dancing baby on Ally McBeal?
You know what? I never really watched a full episode of Ally McBeal, but I did. I used to have a crush on, what was the star's name? Calista Flockhart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You liked them skinny.
Yeah.
Yeah, Calista Flockhart.
You know she's still around. She was in the Supergirl TV show for the first season, eh?
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Isn't she married to Harrison Ford?
Yeah, I think she is actually. Yeah, or at least she was for sure. Yeah.
Wild stuff. All right, so if you like Ally McBeal, then maybe read this issue of Thor and
there you go.
look at Grot. There you go. All right, so the big fight, the Guardians are winning, and then you go to Korvac, and when Thor and Starhawk come in, I always call him Nighthawk. In trivia, Michael, they actually wanted to call him Nighthawk at first.
Really?
Yes, but there's another character that they're going to make named Nighthawk, so they switched it to Starhawk. So
well, Starhawk's more appropriate, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
So Korvac keeps teleporting them back to a minute in the past, before they come into his compound. So they run in, he zaps them back. They run in, they zaps them back, until Thor finally just throws his hammer and breaks his little teleporting machine. And but then, Michael, what does Korvac do?
Korvac, where are we here? We're in the same. I'm on page 34 of my collection. This is where he teleports away. But how can he if it's broken?
well, his plan goes to hell when he does something where he takes control of their minds, and he forces Thor and Starhawk to fight each other.
Oh yes, of course, yes. Have at thee, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
They don't want to fight each other, but they can't control themselves. And Thor says, "I'll try and pull my punches because I'm a god here. I don't want to be killing this little Starhawk kid." But apparently Starhawk's very strong himself.
Yes. Well, being the son of Quasar, he would be, right?
Yeah. So they go toe to toe, but the whole time they're fighting, they're really not trying to kill each other. But what their plan is, Michael, is that while they're fighting and Korvac's laughing it up, look, they're fighting, No, Korvac, you miscalculated. Because they're fighting each other to tear down your headquarters. They're causing so much damage to the surrounding area that everything collapses and caves in, and Korvac has to run away or teleport away, or he can't run. He's half robot from the waist down.
Well, it's I guess it's left ambiguous, but I mean, obviously we know he comes back for the Korvac Saga, so yes, he does teleport away.
I think he gets away.
Yep. And then the spell is lifted, and so they can stop fighting, right?
Yes. And while they're celebrating the victory, Thor's like, "Hey, we did it!" And Starhawk he goes over to the machine and he zaps Thor back to his regular time back in 1977, without even telling him. He's like, "Hey, you got to go back to where you belong." Bing. And there goes Thor.
And then at the end, he's got his, fare thee well, Guardians. I fare thee well.
Yes.
I love it.
Fare thee well. All right, so let's get into the writers and the creators here. You mentioned Len Wein, co-plotter and editor. And Wein's first pro work, Michael, was Teen Titans in 1968 as a 20-year-old.
Wow.
As a 20-year-old. Do you hear many 20-year-olds breaking into the business these days, like starting off on a book like Teen Titans? That's a rare.
No,
I would say these days.
It just doesn't. I have to agree. Sometimes, apparently, Gerry Conway, when he took over Amazing Spider-Man from Stan Lee, he was only 19.
Yeah. And for those who don't recall, Conway then went on into the Gwen Stacy stuff not long after that. So
right. Good writer, yeah.
His first work at Marvel was Daredevil 71 in 1970. And he co-created Swamp Thing with Bernie Wrightson for DC in 1971.
This is true, yep.
He was actually the Marvel editor-in-chief in 1974, just for 1 year.
Which means he was how old then? He was 26? Around. You said he got in it when he was age 20 and 68? Yeah.
26 years old, editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. He only did it 1 year.
When I was 26, I was working at Best Buy. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I was still having trouble with my colors when I was 26. Then he had lengthy writing runs on Marvel Team Up, Amazing Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Fantastic Four. He also wrote The Defenders and Brother Voodoo. I love Brother Voodoo. Oh, Lord help me, I love Brother Voodoo.
Yeah.
And again, there's a flea market fantasy column on your site with Brother Voodoo.
That's right. I forgot about that, yeah.
In 1975, Wine and artist Dave Cockrum revitalized the X-Men and created Nightcrawler, Colossus, Storm, and Thunderbird for Giant X-Men #1.
Giant size X-Men, yep.
Yep. Giant size, that's correct.
Yeah, sorry. Did he write the first Wolverine story?
Yes. I have.
Okay.
I have that down here somewhere. Yeah, he co-created Wolverine with Roy Thomas, John Romita Sr., and Herb Trimpe for Hulk 180 and 181 in 1974. And then they brought Wolverine over to the X-Men.
So yeah, I mean, he's, to be honest, I've never read a Len Wein story that I think is great. He's never been one of my favorite writers, but he seems to be well respected. I know Grant Morrison really likes him, so maybe there's more to him than I realize.
But I mean, the history of comic books would be vastly different without Len Wein.
This is true.
Wolverine and the X-Men would not be existing where they are.
Or the Man-Thing.
That's exactly right. But the X-Men back in the day, they were just publishing reprints. They weren't even a thing, and they were done.
True.
And then the giant-sized X-Men 1 brought them back to life, all because of Len Wein and Dave Cockrum. So. Yep.
So you're right. He did technically alter comics history. That's true.
Now, Roger Stern is the co-plotter, and he's the scripter. We talked about Roger Stern a couple weeks ago because he wrote that Captain America issue we reviewed in #1 of Flea Market Fantasy. So don't really need to go down too much about Roger Stern. But he was the scripter. And, Michael, this issue has a lot of, I would say, memorable quotes or laughable quotes. I don't know. Here's the thing about
one-liners?
Here's the thing about Thor.
Okay.
If you like Shakespeare, you'll love it. But if not, maybe not. A little too many thous and these and doths and yonders, and I don't know. I was never a fan. Did you like Thor as a kid?
No, you know what? Of all the Marvel superheroes, I think the only, I'm talking about the big ones, right? The only character who I didn't, actually two. The only ones who I didn't have a lengthy run for were Doctor Strange and Thor. Huh. And I think it's because Doctor Strange was older and he just didn't interest me. He looked older, right? Yeah. And Thor is because of his dang speech pattern.
Yes.
Now that I'm more familiar with Shakespeare, and so I actually kind of enjoyed reading his dialogue. But it's basically if he's supposed to be Marvel's version of Superman, they're sort of main powerful character. I can understand why he was never as big, and I think it's because of his speech pattern, which of course they got rid of around the year 2000, right?
Yeah, I never liked Thor growing up. I never read any of them, never liked him. But all credit to Chris Hemsworth though. Now I like Thor.
Yeah.
Because of those movies.
Yeah, he's got a different, especially Thor Ragnarok. I love that movie.
Yep. But but now if I hear Thor, I'm like, oh, I like Thor. But up until those movies, nope, never liked them.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, lots of thous and these. So if you like that sort of stuff, you'll love this. Otherwise, not so good.
I agree.
And like you said, there seem to be a couple plot holes in here. But I guess it's a fun story, maybe, because you got the Guardians and you got the Minions of Menace. So that's kind of cool, I guess.
I mean, if you were to have this exact plot with and take out the time travel and the Guardians, it wouldn't be if it was just some random superhero team, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting to me.
Yeah.
That's really all there is to it. Is that the science fiction stuff is what makes it good to me.
All right, so that's all about the writing. Anything else you'd like to say about the writing?
Not much. I mean, not spectacular. But there's other Guardians of the Galaxy stories that are better, so that's okay. I can forgive this one. It's definitely fun, so I don't mind it.
So you definitely prefer the older team to the Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot
Well,
team?
I mean, to be honest, I haven't read the comic version of the new team, so I can't really compare it one to one. But I definitely, when they announced the movie, I think I was the only guy on Earth who was like, "Oh, here we go, Nikki and Starhawk." And sure enough, I was wrong. It's the other lineup. So.
Nikki and Starhawk.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, not so much. All right. Well, to the art side of things, Sabu Sama.
Yes.
Sabu Sama. He's the younger brother of John, 9 years younger. And he didn't get into comics until he was 32. He had worked.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
He had worked as an illustrator in advertising and for design firms and stuff. And when he was doing those gigs, he took some inking work for Marvel. And because that's all he wanted to do was just be an inker. And his brother John took him aside and said, "Hey, you could do this. You could draw too." So for like 1 year, he just practiced drawing, and John showed him the ropes, how to draw and everything. So for 1 year, he studied, and then he got a gig right out of the gate. I believe he started with the Avengers. If I'm not mistaken. His first work as an inker, because John actually requested Sal ink his work on the Silver Surfer.
Yes, and he was great. Yeah.
He got his first gig with the Avengers. Then he had a 10-year run on the Hulk, going from issues 194 to 309.
Amazing.
That's impressive. Yep. I mean, how often do you hear that?
Oh, today that's unheard of. You're lucky if you get 3 issues out of someone, right?
And he also had a very lengthy run on Spectacular Spider-Man, going uninterrupted from 134 to 213, and then 215 to 238. So,
amazing.
Yeah, and he said when he first started, he said he was lucky if he could do like 5 or 6 pages a week. And then he said he just got better and better at it. And he said he noticed a distinct change after doing it for 5 years. He could just, crank it out quickly. And he was doing multiple books and, so yeah, Sabu Sama, true prose pro. That's Sabu Sama.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I obviously knew him when I was a kid. I first saw his work on probably Spectacular Spider-Man and Thor. And I didn't really think much of him. But as the years went by, I started to like him more. And looking back, I realized he is a really, really good artist. Like, obviously, John Buscema, his older brother, is like a master, like one of the best of the 20th century, in my opinion. But Sabu Sama, his style is not as appealing, and he tends to use the same positions and the same facial expressions over and over again. But if you just look at his storytelling, it is flawless, which I'm sure he learned from his brother, right?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, you can look at his art and say, "Oh, wow, this is very similar to John Buscema." Like just the way they draw hands or just action poses, it's very similar. And you're like, "Wow, this is definitely a Buscema drawn issue." I think his work here is a little inconsistent in this book. Like I think the art in the first chapter was probably the best work here, and then it might get a little looser as it goes along.
Yeah, you could argue that. Yeah, and it definitely. I don't know at this point if he was a good match with Klaus Janson. Maybe later on he would have been, but it's a little bit awkward, the pairing between the two. Yeah,
that's probably another good point. It's not like they're regular collaborators or anything.
Right.
But yeah, there's still some great stuff in here, though. Like, you'll see, there'll be like individual panels where you're like, oh, that's spectacular. Oh, that's a great panel. But then it'll just be kind of middling in between. But you do see some brilliance in here. So I like the art. I agree. It's good stuff.
Yep, classic Marvel art. Yep.
Also, Michael, we need to congratulate Sabu Sama. He created Starhawk, so he's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he created Starhawk.
I didn't know that.
He also created the Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew.
Oh yes, of course, yes. Crusher Creel, right?
No.
Wrecker?
The Wrecker, the guy with the crowbar.
Oh wait, sorry. Crusher Creel was Absorbing Man.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you got it. Yep.
You got Wrecker, Bulldozer, Thunderball, and Pile Driver, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, the Wrecking Crew. Yeah. All right. Like I said, this was a one-shot deal for him on Thor, and Simonson was the regular artist. But yeah, Sabu Sama, I'd like to go back and maybe we'll read some of his Hulk stuff. But,
that would be great. That would be great because it's funny again because when I look at isolated pages from his Hulk run or his Avengers run, like sometimes I cannot believe just the storytelling. Like, I don't even know if I knew what storytelling was until I really studied him and John Buscema. Like, he's such a good artist. Like, I think you could learn, any modern artist could learn a lot just by looking at his stuff.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Any other points about this issue, Michael?
I don't know. I guess I can only say that, I've read some newer Thor by Jason Aaron, and it's really good. It's really well written. But, there's just always something to be said for these Bronze Age comics, because, reading this was so much fun.
Sure. It's okay. It's okay.
Hey, I didn't say it was good. I said it was fun. Okay?
Yeah, it was definitely more fun than good.
Yeah.
I would say, at least you had the fight scenes. You had the Guardians beating up, the minions there, and then you had Thor and Starhawk going at it. So you had a couple fight scenes. I also liked how the Guardians are shown. Like I said, they work as a team to save their ship. And then the first time we see the Minions of Menace and Korvac, the Minions of Menace are just squabbling with each other and fighting each other. And Korvac has to settle them down, like, quit it, you bums, But so, the good team working together, bad team fighting each other. There's a lesson there. There's a lesson to be learned.
You got it.
And, finally, the Guardian ship is called Freedom's Lady. That has to be the worst name for a ship ever.
It's not the greatest. Apparently, it replaced the original ship, right?
Yeah, what was?
Which was called the Captain America, right?
That sounds. Yeah, I think that is correct. Yeah, the Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Vance Astro, he loves Captain America. Like, I remember when I did that issue for Flea Market Fantasy, there's scenes where he's in his little apartment on the ship, his little room or whatever, and on the walls there's just pictures of Captain America. Not like foxy ladies or anything. Captain America.
No, okay. Well, I guess, coming from the 20th century, the idea is that he's supposed to be, he's like the Superman of Marvel. Like, everyone looks up to him. So I think it makes sense,
I guess, but, Captain
America. The thing is like, obviously, once the Guardians show up in the story, I wished it could have been better. Like, I wish it would have been a little bit more, I don't know, I guess subdued and kind of nuanced, but they kind of get into the typical Marvel misunderstandings and disagreements and fights, and then the bad guys all get into they're all fighting each other and arguing. And so I guess overall the story could have been a little bit smarter, but I guess it kind of just chooses to be sort of a typical dumb, I don't want to say that, but it is. It's a pretty dumb story. Not great, but it's fun.
Oh, also, when Thor goes back, on the last page of the issue, he gets out back and they tell, like, Nikki finds out he's gone and she says something like, who needs him anyway, or who wants him anyway?
Yeah.
I'm
not going to lose any sleep over him.
She's a Spitfire, that Nikki. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So if Vance Astro's got pictures of Cap, then Nikki's probably got pictures of Thor now, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I think 1 to 10, I'd probably give it a 4. I think
it's kind of a sliding scale. Like, I'll give it a 6 because I wouldn't rush out to read it again, but I would read it again just because, like I said, it's fun. There's nothing bad about it. So I'll give it a 6.
Yeah, it's just kind of average, but it's nice to see the original Guardians and to be introduced to Korvac and the Minions of Menace. I guess was pretty cool, but I don't know. The story overall is just so, but not a huge fan. But
I'm with you. I mean, technically, that's why they say that Thor, between Kirby and Simonson, Thor was terrible for like 10 years. So I guess this is an example of that, right? They didn't really know what to do with him. So
yeah, apparently. All right, Michael. So next week it's one of my picks. And
yes. What do you got?
Well, I think I'd like to pick more obscure issues, like just stuff people haven't heard of or read. But I want to read Moon Knight.
Ah, nice.
And I'm like, well, let's just go Moon Knight #1. How about it?
Oh,
from 1980.
Okay.
From 1980, of course. Moon Knight #1.
Oh, I thought you meant the one from 2012. But okay,
no. The original Moon Knight. Because I had a couple Moon Knight issues when I was a kid, and I was going to read one of the ones I had, and I was like, now let's just go back to issue 1, because this will be the first issue that I've picked that I haven't read yet. So this will be a new experience for me.
Cool. All right.
Up until this point, I did the Captain America and the Daredevil, which I loved. So this will be completely new, and we're going to go Moon Knight because they're coming out with a new TV show about the Moon Knight.
That's right.
On Disney. So this will be a good way to introduce people to the character and get a sense of who Moon Knight is.
And is this Doug Mensch?
Yes, he's the writer, and the artist, Michael.
Is Bill Sienkiewicz?
That's right, Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yes, early Bill Sienkiewicz, right?
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't. You won't really recognize. I just looked at 1 or 2 pages so far, and you wouldn't recognize it as Bill Sienkiewicz like right away. So put it that.
I'm looking forward to it because I've definitely read some. I've read like the Warren Ellis Moon Knight and everything that came after that, but I have never read an original run Moon Knight comic. So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad starting with number 1 because that's like, oh, but who? No, I want to read the origin. I want to see how it starts. So
sure, understandable. Yeah, that's great. Good pick.
All right.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess that wraps up this episode of Flea Market Fantasy. So we'll see everybody next week. Every Tuesday, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll see you guys all next Tuesday.